So, because we finished our entire math study, we're back at the beginning. Now we're back at fractions. So we started at fractions, then we went to percents, then we went to ratio and proportions, then we went to basic shape measurements. Now we're back at the beginning to fractions again. And so tonight we're going to work on adding and subtracting fractions. But here's the deal. On the GED test, you're not going to get a fraction problem like this. What's 1 1/3 plus 2 3/7? You're not going to get a problem like that. What you're going to get is a word problem. So what we're going to do is first we're going to start here so you can get the skill down, and then we're going to go to the word problems to look at how you're actually going to see it play out on the GED test. So there's two things we have to think about. Number one is the skill, but then on the math test, what we're really going to see is the word problem. We're not going to see these kind of problems. But these kind of problems or these skill exercises are really what's beneath the problem, right? So for example, they may say, you know, I don't know, John has 1 1/3 yards of fabric, and Jim has 2 3/7 yards of fabric. How much do they have together, right? So you have to be able to read those kinds of questions. That's a very simple example. They'll be a lot more difficult to test, but you'll need to be able to read the word problem and then interpret it to write it down like this. So you do need to know how to do this piece here. So there's 4 steps we need to do in order to add, subtract, or compare fractions. Let's review them. The step number 1 is finding the lowest common denominator, okay? So on the other packet I've given you, this one that says fractions, adding, subtracting, comparing, reducing, this is where we are now. So the first step is you have to find, if you want to add, subtract, or compare fractions, the first step we have to take is finding the lowest common denominator. Does everyone know how to do the LCD? Okay, good. Does everyone know how to create a new fraction based upon the LCD? Good. Does everyone know how to perform the operation? Good. Everyone know how to reduce? Okay, so let's do a couple examples here. So let's go ahead and turn to page 3 and let's take these steps. So let's try number 2. Number 2 says 16 4/10. This is a subtraction problem, 9 3/15. So 9 3/15 subtracted from 6 14 is 6 4/10. So the first step is to find the LCD. How do we do that? What's the lowest common denominator of 10 and 15?
What are we looking at?
We're on page 2 of the fractions packet.
Yeah, it says page 2, but I'm not finding anything that you're saying.
Or page 3, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Page 3.
We're not seeing 16.
So 16 4/10, right? Number 2 on the bottom of page 3. 16 4/10, and we're subtracting 9 3/15 from 16 4/10. So how do we find the lowest common denominator?
Look into the numbers. The one that matches.
Okay. So we have 10 and 15.
30.
Okay. So it's 30. So the way we find the lowest common denominator is we simply just run the multiples of the number, right? Just as if we had a multiplication chart in front of us. 1, 2, 10 times 1 is 10, 10 times 2 is 20, 10 times 3 is 30, 15 times 1 is 15, 15 times 2 is 30, 15 times 3 is 45, but we found our lowest common denominator, the number 30. So now step 2 is to create our new fractions. How do we do that? Divide? Divide what? 15 into 30 goes in there 2 times. Then what do we do with that?
2 times 3 is 6.
2 times 3 is 6. So we're going to do it backwards Z, right? 15 goes into 30 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 goes here. 10 goes into 30 3 times. 3 times 4 is 12 goes here. Okay? So 16 minus 9 is 7. 12 minus 6 is all over. Are we done?
No.
What do we have to do now?
Reduce.
Reduce it. So how do we reduce it?
You divide the numerator and the denominator by the lowest common denominator, right?
Close. So we're going to divide the numerator and the denominator not by the lowest common denominator this time, but now because we want to reduce it, we want to think about the biggest number that these two numbers have in common. Right? And so what's the biggest number that these two numbers have in common? 6. Right? 6 divided by 6 is? 30 divided by 6 is? So our final answer would be 7 1/5.
Wouldn't you do 2? Because 2 goes into 6 and 30.
We could do
You
2.
lost me.
Huh?
You lost me.
Okay. We could do 2, but 6 divided by 2 is 3. 30 divided by 2 is 15, and we still have to reduce it again.
Oh, okay.
So that's why when you're reducing, you think about the greatest common factor or the biggest number that these two have in common. Okay? All right. So Patricia says I lost her. So let's take it from the top. 16 4/10. And we're going to subtract 9 3/15 from that.
Right.
Okay? So the first step is to find the lowest common denominator. We find the lowest common denominator by running the multiples of 10 and 15.
Right.
10 times 1, 10 times 2, 10 times 3 is 30. 15 times 1, 15 times 2 is 30. So now we have our new denominator is 30. And so we say 15 goes into 30 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6.
Right.
But the question is, why do we do that? Okay? Because if 15 is increased by 30, right? Then, is increased by 2 to become 30. It's another way of looking at it, right? Then the top has to be increased by the same thing,
Right.
so your new fraction stays balanced and equal. If 10 it was increased by, or multiplied by 3 to become 30, then 4 has to be increased by or multiplied by 3 to become 12, so it stays equal and balanced in your new fraction. Okay? So now, because of the subtraction, we're doing step number 3 now, performing the operation. 12 minus 6 is 6, and then 30 all over 30. Okay? Then step 4 tells us that we have to reduce. So when we're reducing, we're looking for the greatest common factor. We're looking for the largest number that goes evenly into both of these numbers. So in this case, we found that it was 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 30 divided by 6 is 5 1/5. Okay? Then 16 minus 9 is 7. So our final answer becomes 7